If you guys can hit that subscribe button to help me reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, it would honestly make me really happy. Thank you again for your support. Enjoy the video. This video contains graphic content. Listener discretion is advised. I've had a misfortune of coming across a few scary guys in my life. My friends will say that I'm a weirdo magnet, so I'm pretty wary in now that I'm a bit older, but when I was a teenager, I suppose you could say that I'm very naive. When I was 20 years old, me and my family, my mom and my little sister, had moved from a small rural village in the Shires to a town down south. It was a huge change, and as I've been having some difficult time, I welcomed the change of a scenery. It was a beautiful town in the country, but I struggled to find a job and became very frustrated as my mom needed help with money. Over the course of 3 months, we became fairly friendly with a middle-aged guy who owned a takeaway and shop downtown. I will call him Phil. If ever he sees us doing some shopping, he will come over and chat with us and ask how the family was doing. And he genuinely seemed like a decent, caring bloke. So when he said that he might have a job for me in a shop with a small flat upstairs that I could just rent for nothing, I thought, okay, great. Maybe things are looking up. Phil got our address and told me and my mom that he would just pop by early in the evening, and that when he finished, he would just come take me in a car and go see the flat. I get myself looking fairly casual but presentable, and I'm feeling excited and confident thinking about, wow, a job in a flat that I just killed 2 birds with 1 stone here. I just need to show him that I'm really sophisticated and will make a great employee. Around 8 p.m., he knocks on the front door. My mom answers. He tells her that we will probably only be about an hour and a half. He will have me back safe in no time. Now, I didn't take my phone with me as I had no credit to call out, and didn't think I would be needing it with this quick trip up the road and back. In hindsight, this was a pretty stupid thing to do. Maybe if I had my phone with me, this would have deterred him for what he did to me. It was already dark out because it's March. We get into his car and we start driving, and he is chatting away, asking how I am and telling me what the flat is like. When within matters of a few minutes, I noticed that we were not taking the conventional route that would directly take us to the town. At first, I thought he was just taking me down to some shortcut around town to get to it, and just reasons with myself that he knows the area so well that I don't. 30 seconds after I realized that he is taking me to a completely opposite direction, I could tell that he was driving away from the populated town and into an area where trees, swamps, both sides of the road. My brain is now working overtime, thinking, where the fuck is this guy taking me? And I just managed to keep my composure and ask him outright, hey, where are we going? Town's back the other way. I just thought I would take you on a little tour. It's beautiful here. Many trees and peaceful places here. I would just love to show you everything here. He tells me in a normal, cheery tone. I wasn't capable of saying anything in that very moment because the logical and the reasoning sides of my brain were on full blown at war. I'm trying to keep calm, thinking, okay, he seems fairly normal. Why wouldn't he want to show me around in this stunning area full of natural beauty? He's probably proud to show me around where he lives. The logical side, however, disagrees, and a wave of panic comes over me, and a little voice enters my head and shouts, what in the dark? Shit, no! Are you stupid? So I just sit there in silence, taking in the scenery, which is becoming more sinister by the second because at the moment in time, I didn't know what to think. All I know is every cell in my body is screaming at me to find a way out of the situation. I started looking for signposts, houses, any distinct landmarks, ditches, huge trees, anything that would be able to recognize on my way back if I'm able to get out of his car. Phil can obviously sense that I'm nervous, so I'm just talking away about me, about the job that I like, and how the staffs are going to be friendly to me. Before I know that, he started to slow down to a crawl, and he has turned down a little mud rut road with a dense tree line on one side and pitch black open fields on the other. My stomach literally drops. My body contemplates power vomiting all over his car because the reality of what is about to happen hits me like a freight train. I'm thinking to myself, if I jump out of here, I am able to run over the muddy fields into literally nowhere. But my imagination starts rather helping flashing by images of him grabbing me before I get the chance to get out of the car. So I just sit there, buckled in the passenger seat, not saying a word. I'm just thinking to myself, if he attacks me, don't make a sound. Don't give him the satisfaction of showing him that I'm scared. My brain is just about as useful as chocolate teapot. And I was just starting to get angry with myself not doing anything, but I was just terrified. We came out of the top of the little dirt road. There was a little car parked surrounded by a woodland with one car sat in it. It was clear there were people having sex. And as he pulls near the car, I realize that he has brought me to a local dogging spot. He turns to me and puts his hand on my knee. We should do what they were doing. And a deadly serious expression on his face. I make this bizarre, half nervous laugh, half garbling high-pitched whine and trying to laugh out the suggestion to show that I'm not really into it and that I'm super uncomfortable right now. The alarmed expression on his face and my gargle crackle, which sounded like I've been swallowing a potato whole, clearly freaked him out, and I'm mentally congratulating myself for my social awkwardness and grossly unsexy reaction. Come on, it'll be fun. No one will see us. He persists. No, I don't want to. Plus, I'm kind of seeing someone right now. I lie. But he sits there just smiling at me like a Cheshire cat, like I'm going to miraculously change my mind at the sight of his weird face. My mom will be expecting me home by now. I tell him this after an insanely uncomfortable 30 seconds. More of this as I'm trying my damn hardest to not make eye contact with him. I'm sure she won't mind with you being out a little bit longer with me. You can trust me, you know. He tells me this with a straight face as we sit next to the sex wagon parked next to us. I sharply pull my leg away from his grip and tell him again. Mom is waiting for me. She will start panicking if I'm not home in the next few minutes. Take me home right now. I look him straight in the face, and he knows that I'm not messing around. Okay, fine. I'll take you back now. Without another word, he drives me out of there, out of that creepy, seedy place, and back home. My finger is literally hovering over the seatbelt button, ready to jump out. As we pull outside our home, I sigh with a breath of relief as I can see my safety literally a few feet away. And before he can stop me, I'm out of there. I slam the door behind me. As I'm stepping over a tiny little rope fence around our garden, he gets out of his car, and my heart sinks. I think I'll pop in and see your mom quickly, he tells me, and I swear I can see a smirk on his face, but I know he is only doing this because he is freaking out, knowing damn well that I'm going to tell her. He was just trying to delay the inevitable, or scare me to keep my mouth shut. But before I can try to talk him out of it, Mom has heard us and pulls up, opens the front door. I barge past her with only one thought in my mind. I head straight into the kitchen, grab a small knife out of a drawer, and fly into my little sister's room like a mad woman. Don't you fucking leave this room, no matter what you hear. You understand me, right? I whispered this to her. She sees the knife in my hand, knowing that I'm stuffing up my sleeve, and she just looks at me with a panic in her eyes. Okay. I walk back into the living room, and this guy is sitting on our sofa, sprawled out comfortable as fuck, like he's at home. When he did that, all I saw was red. I swear to God, I felt like the Hulk. I'm ready for the bastard. I awkwardly perched myself on the arm of the sofa where my mom was sitting on, the absolute furthest away from him that I can manage. And as he sits there making small talk with my mom about how she's finding the area, or the neighbors friendly, all the while keeping his beardly little weasel's eyes on my every move. Why don't you come over and sit down next to me? He pats on the sofa, cushion next to him. No, I'm all right here, thanks. I tell him as I'm fidgeting with my sleeve, trying to stop the little knife from falling out in front of him. Why are you sat over there? Come sit with me. Honestly, I won't bite. He laughs and pats the seat next to him again. No, I'm quite comfortable here. Thank you very much. This time, through gritted teeth. My mom, bless her, is looking at both of us during this back and forth like tennis match, and I could see something is registering in her eyes. She could see my behavior is off. I got one bum cheek weirdly perched off the sofa, so I'm like half stood up, half sat down, and I'm fiddling around with my sleeve. I'm twitchy as hell, and my mom is starting to notice. My mom, staring at me in the face intensely, mentally trying to speak to her through the power of telepathy alone. It must have looked like a nutter. I think it's getting late now, so I think you should go, sir. She finally speaks. My mom's starting to look around all anxiously now, as she finally had to twig that something must have happened. Phil gets up and agrees and mumbles something about having to check something at a shop. And when he walks by me, is nearly out of the room when he pauses and turns to me and puts his hand to shake mine. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck of a weird thing to do. I take the opportunity to kindly offer him my hand that I had the knife on. Taking it with a bit more force than is polite, he soon yanked my grubby mitt out of mine when the tip of the blade had jabbed him in the hand. He looked down and saw the blade, then looked at me. I looked at him with such disgust. Phil's eyes widened a bit. He hightailed out of there, out of our home, so fast without another word. A prick for a prick. I told my mom everything, and she was fuming. We did discuss about going to the police, but there wasn't really any crime that was committed on his part of the side, other than just being a major creep. Sadly, when I mentioned it to a couple girls my age who lived down the street, they cleaned up and started shot looks at each other. I guess he had probably done the same type of thing before. Soon we later moved away to a different area after that. I'm so glad to report that I never saw the smug face, ever, again. So, Kebab Phil, let's not meet, ever, again. Before I tell you the story, I have to say something that happened about 3.5 years ago when I was between ages 15 and 18. All the people in the story have been changed for their privacy reasons. I grew up in a pretty good sized town. High school grades always between 800 to 1,000 students. The town was between 45 minutes to an hour in the second largest city in the state, which is also known to have 3 rivers and many bridges. I have 2 older brothers, which means obviously I'm the youngest of the 3 boys. My mom was a general manager at my grandpa's golf course. By no means we were well off in any way, but we were far from poor. And my father was in the state police, a lieutenant at the time of everything happening. Dad was hard on us when needed, but all 3 of us learned to always be respectful no matter what, no matter how extreme the situation was. I will say that due to a very dark history, I've never had a close relationship with all my brothers or parents. Even with all that, I'll admit that this made my dad and I slightly closer for a very short amount of time, and that we only had one thing in common. that we protect the ones that we love at all times, no matter the cost of our lives. When I was 15, I went down to the downtown area, getting food and ice cream with friends at a place about a mile and a half from high school. Being that we were only 15, going to our 10th grade year high school, and almost 16, we all rode up to our bikes to meet up. My hometown was split into 6 wards. The restaurant was about 1.5 miles away. I live in the first ward. When we came back outside to leave to do something else, I realized that my bike was missing. As soon as my group checked the immediate area, I called my dad knowing that he was home from work, and he flew down where I was. We all figured that he was pissed at us, which he wasn't at all. All my friends got into our bikes to go off in different directions towards their own homes to look for the bike. As my dad and I were driving towards the part of town that we live in, we saw a group of 3, 2 males, 1 female, walking down a side street towards the street that we were on, 1.5 miles from the restaurant. The group was pushing my bike as they walked, causing me to snap my attention and loudly say, "Hey, that's my bike." My dad stopped immediately, put the car in park in the middle of the street. We jumped out and I laughed inside due to seeing my dad go from the usual cop dad. Well, he had the girl and one guy stand against the wall with their faces touching it, and he slammed the guy with the bike to the ground. I grabbed the bike and put it in the bed of the truck. Since it was only 2 of us against 3, my dad told me, "Get in the truck so they don't see your face." I said, "Fuck that." And it wasn't until years later I came to regret that. The cops came to me, arrest all 3 of them. Fast forward 2.5 years later, I was 18 years old and home for my fresh year of college, which was spent in the military college across the state from home, which stuff I learned during my time at school. This will help out. I was jogging around 6 p.m. one night on the sidewalk next to the road where the car just flew right past me. It sat at a stop sign until I passed them. Luckily, I was close to home and memorized the car details, or as much as I could. The vehicle drove past me and went even slower. I walked into the house when they passed by. I did nothing wrong with the situation other than someone driving fast and slowing down upon realizing that someone was just jogging. Fast forward 1 week, and I just finished another jog. I walked into the house through the front door, which led to the kitchen, which has big windows and lookouts in the driveway, front yard, street, the stop sign. As soon as I walked into the sink by the window and splashed cold water in my face, I heard a loud boom from outside. It sounded like an M18 exploding. Then 1 second of silence. Then 3 loud booms in quick successions, which, thanks to being a hunter, I knew this was gunfire. I immediately dropped down, crawled to the door, grabbed the baseball bat. This is the same baseball bat my brother and I used before we ran into the door, even though I knew the bat has 0 chance of winning against a firearm. But I was hoping that I would just surprise them. When I got outside, they just drove away, and I recognized the vehicle from a week earlier. This was the same car that stopped at the stop sign in front of me when I was out jogging. Thankfully, no one was at home at the time, since who knows where they'd be standing when this happened. After the police came, I gave them my statement. We waited. Since the town was big for a town, it was also small enough for a lot of people to know everyone. The town's police, my brothers all joke with me, ask things like, "Did you try to be a hero when no one was around?" Or would ask if I was crazy due to running outside towards gunfire without a gun. Well, 2 or 3 days passed, and we have received calls from the cops saying that they caught the guy who shot at the house. As it turns out, this was the same guy that stole my bike 2.5 years earlier. After finding that out, my dad and I looked at each other without saying anything. We didn't tell my mom about it, about being the same guy, and that they seen me finish up and walk into the house, luckily by chance. The guy received 10 years for attempted murder with a weapon, attempted assault, but due to not a single person being injured in any way, no assault charges of any kinds were charged towards him. So, we went on with our lives, and I became an EMT during college, during weekends. Then I finished school. When I was 26, I had to stop by my parents' house when I was in the area. Walked into the kitchen, and on the kitchen table was a townspaper on the front page saying something like, Local missing woman. Vehicle found abandoned and burned. As soon as I read the article for a second, I almost immediately ripped the kitchen table off its frame with rage. The article said that the missing woman's boyfriend, for some period of time, was the same guy who stole my bike and was the same guy that shot my parents' house with me inside by the front window. He wasn't arrested or charged for any crime related to the missing woman at the time. I left, went back to my apartment an hour away, and made sure that I was always carrying a pistol, except when I was working on the ambulance. Even through all this rage, I was feeling somewhat paranoid with thoughts that maybe he was following me, but still, it's unlikely. My parents left their home for a week to stay away at my grandparents' house, which was empty due to time with him leaving on the golf course. Life went on from there, and I still work as the EMT in the second biggest city in my state. The guy who shot at my house is currently in prison with unrelated charges to my situation. So the guy that who stole my bike years earlier and tried to kill me, let's not meet ever again. I had a strange experience 12 years ago in Starved Rock State Park, Illinois. It was so bizarre at the time that I'd never discussed it. I began reading the 411 stories a few weeks ago and realized that I encountered fits into the missing 411 profile, that it was part of an actual phenomena. Here's my story. I was visiting my girlfriend in Chicago. On a sunny and calm winter day, we decided to go for a hike in Starved Rock State Park in Illinois. I am an avid hiker, and being on leave from Iraq, I wanted to take some cool air. We hiked in the park for several hours. In late afternoon, we started to head back to the car. About half a mile away from the parking lot we came into, an area where tree branches were broken and pulled towards over the trail. Most of these branches were broken up high, I'd say about 8 feet or more off the ground. I used to live in Washington State before going to Iraq, and I knew something about Sasquatches, so I told my girlfriend that it looks like a Sasquatch was around here, due to the branches that were breaking off high and pulled over the trail. That's about the time things started to get strange. Soon after mentioning that, I felt like someone was staring at me. Okay, it's like you go into a room with a lot of people, and someone is focused on you, and you just get this uneasy feeling, and you can tell that you're being watched. It was like this, but stronger. I started to look around to see who was watching me. It was winter, and the forest was visible hundreds of feet in all directions. There was another hiker group behind us, several hundred feet behind us, and no one was in front of us, but I saw no one was staring at me. As we passed through the Squatch area, I began to have this feeling that someone was right behind me, or following us. I looked around and listened, but saw and heard nothing. There was just people 400 or back of the trail, and they were just talking among themselves. They weren't looking our way. The sense of someone being behind me was persistent, so I kept looking behind me, I say at least twice a minute. But there was just the group way back. The feeling of being watched is one thing, but feeling like someone is close behind you is just something else. It is more disturbing. I told my girlfriend to go further in front of me and let her go about 20 feet because I had this strong sensation of a nearby presence just behind us. So I turned around, not more than 30 seconds since the last time I looked. There was just this woman. She was walking, but coming up to me fast. There was something off about her speed. She was walking when I spotted her, but her speed was much faster than her gait. It was as if she was one of those people moving on the escalator on the airport, you know, the horizontal ones. She was coming up fast, and I'd say no more than 15 to 20 feet behind me when I saw her. I was rather alarmed, and I glared at her. She stopped when we met eyes. I gave her the look like, what the fuck? Why are you coming up to me like that? We stood there staring at each other. Neither of us moved. She had her head cocked back to her left and to the right, and she looked at me from the corner of her eyes in the slightly alarmed, "Ha, you caught me," type of look. She was completely normal looking, like a local Chicago lady, late 50s, wearing a bright red winter coat, gloves, slacks, etc. In hindsight, there are a few other things besides her speed which was standing out. The first thing is that there was no sound, no footsteps, no rustle in the wood, nothing to tell me to turn around other than there was a strong sense of something behind me, which I had for a little bit. At the speed that she was moving, she would have been running hard, but I heard no steps. She was not breathing hard, or her mouth was completely closed. Her gait was a walking gait. She was not running. However, she was moving towards me at a running speed, and I mean fast. When she stopped, I say she was less than 20 feet from me. At the speed that she was moving, in 1 or 2 seconds, she would have been on me. The next thing that stood out was her features. She had no distinguishing features. None in her hair, none in her skin, or clothing. No shadowing or skin hues, dimples, etc. As a former Army criminal investigator, I know to look for distinctive marks on people in clothing. There were none. I estimate her height to be 5'10". Her clothing were of a uniform coloring and distinct. It was like she stepped out of a department store. Her bright red coat was pristine with a uniform hue to it. There wasn't even shading, which there should be, given to the clear sky and low sun. After staring at each other for about maybe 5 or 10 seconds, I felt like I got my point across, so I turned around and continued walking. My girlfriend had not noticed anything and just continued walking. I took about 3 steps forward, and then I realized there was no way she could have came up from that group behind me. There was also no way that she came up from the other side. Visibly at that point was hundreds of feet all around. I said to myself, "No way." And I spun back around, and she was gone. Simply vanished. I checked the group behind us, and no one had a red coat on or was looking at us. There was no one else around. And there had been no sounds other than my footsteps, and then this woman she just freaking vanished. From that point, it took us about 10 minutes to reach the car. For the remainder of the walk, I did not feel like I was being stared at or followed. I've never been back to Starved Rock State Park and have no intentions on going back. The whole thing was just bizarre. How was I supposed to tell someone about that? So I never have. My mental state was fine. I have a high IQ and a 20-year career on STEM field following an army service. At the time, I was working as a DoD IT contract in Iraq. I was well rested and relaxed beyond a vacation with a girlfriend. There were no drugs or alcohol involved. These were strictly prohibited in my line of work and were grounds for immediate termination. I've carried this experience for around 12 years, being unable to talk about it because it was just so exceptional and unexplainable. It was such a relief to read similar stories of the unusual encounters and disappearances. After reading many missing 401 accounts and the profiles of disappearances, I believe I nearly averted being snatched by whatever that thing was. I don't think that it was a woman that I saw. I think it was something different, which I could not see. So, mysterious thing that I saw in the middle of the woods, let's not meet again. I can't say for certain that this was an attempt kidnapping, but it freaked the hell out of me when I was a child. I was visiting the West Edmonton Mall with my parents and godparents and their older son, Steve. This happened during the mid-'80s, and I was 10 years old. All the adults left me with Steve. He was about 15 or 16 at the time, and we went off to do our own thing for the day. Steve was just stuck watching over me through the entire mall. He met up with 3 of his buddies. I remember one of them whispering to ditch me and so they can go and smoke weed and chase girls. Steve said he couldn't, because his parents would have killed him. So they were stuck with me, and I got bored as hell as they dragged me through all the teen cool shops. I was basically trailing after them. They really didn't want to be seen with little kid, and they didn't do much with me. In one store, I feel like I was just being watched. I turned around and there was this middle-aged dude just staring at me with this creepy smile. We went to a few more stores. He kept following me. I was starting to get a little scared, but I didn't want to say anything to Steve and to his buddies because I thought they would make fun of me. I told the guys I need to use the washroom. I figured the creepy guy would get bored and just leave me alone. Oh, I was wrong. This man just followed me into the bathroom and just stood out of the stall, staring through the crack. I was freaking the hell out. Fortunately, one of Steve's friends came into the washroom. I don't know if you noticed something weird about the guy following me into the bathroom or if there was just another reason that he came in. But thank God he did. There was a hushed confrontation outside the stall, and the creep left. After all that, the guys circled up all around me. We just spent the rest of the days, and I was just in the middle of all of them, and their heads were on a swivel. So creepy guy from the stall that was peeking through the cracks, let's not meet ever again. In 2008, I was 15, female, walking home with a 14-year-old female friend in a rich town. I moved a lot and mostly lived in the bad areas, except my 8th grade year in this town. So I was always aware of my surroundings. I noticed a red, rusty truck that I'd seen a while ago. I kept an eye on it, and I told my friend that we should start making circles. It didn't make sense because we were going in a circle. After walking around a few blocks, it got behind us again, so I knew that we were being followed. We had to go down the alley off a main road and just to get home. The two Hispanic men were in their 30s or 40s, and they just shout out, "Hey!" and took off running behind a nearby house, hoping they would think it was our house and just leave us alone. After a minute, we didn't hear the truck running, so we sprinted towards our house. They must have parked nearby because they were chasing us. We were so close to the apartment complex. They couldn't catch up to us if we got inside, locked the doors, called the cops, and my mom. We were holding the kitchen knives until my mom got home. Cops didn't take it seriously enough to rush over. They didn't file a report either, and they thought that we were just imagining it. My mom got furious at them. I'll never forget years later after another move. I was a junior in high school and I saw pictures of their faces and the descriptions of the red truck on the news one night. They were wanted for kidnapping, assault, and never heard of an arrest though. Man, wish the cops really took my report that day. So, both the guys in the red truck, let's not meet again.